Welcome, beautiful souls, to another illuminating episode of the Transform with Angel show, where we explore the edges of consciousness, the heart of healing, and the mysteries of the soul.
Mm.
I am your host, Angel, and today we are opening up a portal, one that invites us into the sacred alchemy of transformation, of purpose, and awakening. We have a special guest with us today. She is nothing short of extraordinary. Melissa Minnich is a transformational leader, humanitarian, and spiritual thought pioneer. As the founder of the Sacred Soul Alchemy Mystery School and creator of the acclaimed Quantum Miracles Docuseries, Melissa is redefining what it means to live a conscious, purpose-driven life. She bridges the realms of science and spirituality, offering a revolutionary approach to personal growth and healing. Melissa is certified in quantum healing, remote healing, neuroscience, divine light energy healing, with advanced training in the Akashic Records, energy medicine, and holds a master's in consciousness and human potential. Wow. She also currently is pursuing her Ph.D. in the same field. With a life rooted in resilience, trauma, transmutation, and divine awakening, Melissa stands as a beacon of hope for those seeking to rise into their highest frequency. And that is what this show is all about. Melissa, welcome to the show. We have so much to talk about.
Thank you, Angel, so much. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about transformation.
Yes, yes, definitely. I mean, from your incredible new book, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Very exciting. It's titled High on Life, and we're going to get into that for sure. I definitely want to hear about your powerful experience in Egypt and your perspectives. I want to pick your brain on the conscious shift happening, the rise of the golden age, all
Mhm.
this stuff that we've just been hearing about and hearing about as spiritual pathfinders. We've been on the path for decades and it's happening. So I always love to hear from someone with higher perspectives on what's happening there. But first, I like to set the tone and give our listeners a chance to learn a little bit about you, get the essence of who you are, something I call soul sparks. This is kind of a rapid fire round. These are just quick, simple answers just to give us an idea of your spirit.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so tell us, I mean, this show is about transformation. What does transformation mean to you?
Well, I think if we grew up in an age where there was Transformers, right? Where you would take a car and it would turn into like a robot or into something else. And I kind of feel like that's what transformation is, right? We're taking this earth vehicle that we have and we're transforming it, transmuting it into this higher realm, this light body, this other place so that we can actually read into dimensions. But transformation could be even more simple. Like you bake a cake and it becomes from liquid and it turns into a cake. And there's all these moments in our lives where even from a young child, where we're taking something, and I call that alchemy, right? We're taking something from what it was. And I say turning it into gold. That's why I call it the alchemy of it, right? We're alchemizing, transforming something from that which it was into something greater through the wounds, through the experiences, through the things that we are, to transform it into something that brings us into a hopefully higher state.
Exactly. Otherwise, what's the point? Why go through all that if it doesn't make us better or
Yeah.
evolve us in
Mhm.
some way? Beautifully said. Beautiful. If you were to pick out one nugget of wisdom, just one from your journey,
Mhm.
what would that one nugget be?
The nugget of wisdom. Oh wow. Almost makes me want to tear up because it's like there's so many powerful things, but I think the thing that comes through the most, going through several dark nights of the soul, going through death and loss and trauma and all of the things, is the idea that the world is not as we think it is. That is the biggest wisdom that I have. I can remember in 2016, I was at a point in my life where I was going home to my alma mater to see my son run a track meet against my old high school. Now, my old high school was where I had been raped, where there had been like, all these things had come through. And the last time I had been back in that town was in 2003 when I was an international drug trafficker. And I went through the town like this, right? Like, screw this town, like whatever. It was the house that I grew up in that I was abused. The house that I was raped in was over here, right? It was like this Bermuda Triangle, I called it. And I drove into that in 2003 with my son in tow at a very young age and just was like, screw the world. And then 13 years later in 2016, I drove back through that town and hit that Bermuda Triangle and stopped in it and actually turned off the car and started crying tears of joy. Because at that moment, I had realized that all of the things that I had been through, from the abuse from my father and all of these things and everything that had happened to me, was to bring me to a point where I could then heal and share it with the world. And at that point in 2016, I had started doing my healing journey in like 2009. And by 2016, I had gone international and was doing some really big work in the world. And I realized that I wouldn't be where I was at that moment if I hadn't had everything from my childhood. And so I was able to see that not everything is what it seems to be. Like, all of these things that I thought were against me, that everything was, I was able to look at it in a different way. And I think that's the biggest piece of wisdom is when we're sitting in the depths of the crap is like, it's not always what it seems to be. Maybe there is the most beautiful gift that you could ever imagine in that you're just waiting to find out what it is.
Wow. That's some massive trauma that you just spewed out. And that moment that you realized you've been healed, those were not tears of regret and sadness and pain. Those were tears of being able to look back and see the whole point of the journey, which to get to that point, that's what I call the resurrect stage. That is a beautiful moment. Yeah. And that brought me chills while you were talking. Poof, can't wait to dive a little deeper into all that. The last question here is, who was your mentor that really deeply influenced you, and how did they influence you? We all have at least one major messenger on our path, on our journey. Who was yours?
It's been interesting. I've had several. So when I knew that this question was coming, I was like, Neil Donald Walsh, Gary Zukov, and then I've sat with different shamans and healers around the world and sat in ceremony and sweat lodges and different things, and had some really amazing pieces of that. And it's funny because my mentors, when I was first Neil Donald Walsh, Gary Zukov, when I was reading them, trying to heal myself, they were like people out there. And now they're actually people that are in my phone, right, that I can call up. And I've interviewed them and things like that. And so it's become this huge, like, full circle. But I really think in my entire life, when I was able to tap into my higher self, that has been my greatest mentor. Actually being able to listen to my higher self and know that the answers are true that are coming from there. And the wisdom from that, as I have grown through myself, that has been the greatest mentor in my life when I actually started listening to it.
Ah, great answer. When we do find our own voice and realize the inner intelligence and that innate teacher, oh my gosh, that is the greatest mentor. Beautiful. Well, I want to start from the beginning here. I mean, let's go back a little bit. You have an incredible journey. I'm sure you tell this story in your book. It's also on your website. What I'm wondering is, what was the moment that made you realize something had to change?
Mine was 2009. 5 years prior to 2009 and 2004, I got out of the drug trafficking that I was in, and I went into 5 years of living the normal life, right? The life that they're telling you. I had graduated from college, top of my class, summa cum laude, all this stuff. And then I got deep into this world. And so I was very smart, had a six-figure job out of college. And then all of a sudden I ended up in this other world. And in 2004, I overdosed two of my friends, and they changed my life, and I got out and I left. And in 2009, 5 years into this journey of doing things the right way, the regular job, no more drugs, just like drinking on the weekends or whatever, right? Like not the big party, right? Working out, back breaking 80 hours of work a week. I was an assistant general manager of a restaurant, living just this normal life. And I always was like, there's got to be something more than this. I had eczema. I had physical issues. I hadn't healed any of my trauma. I had herniated discs in my back. I was like, a mess. Like I'm like early 30s, right? And I'm having problems moving. My hands are splitting open and bleeding, and I'm working all this stuff. And I'm like being told that this is the life that I'm supposed to live after leaving this wild and crazy, beautiful life of like awesome parties and all this. And I'm like, this is it. The magic of me saying this is it was that I got fired from my job. I filed a sexual harassment suit against my boss, and they fired me for it. And and my girlfriend at the time left me and moved upstairs with the girl upstairs. And so I then was no job, no partner, and I got evicted from my apartment. And that was all within a 6-month time frame. And that 6-month time frame allowed me to move into my car. I was homeless. I lived in my car for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months. And then I had people would give me a place to stay or this or that, but I just couldn't afford enough to rent a place. And I remember at that moment when I got that eviction notice, I dropped to my knees and I said, I surrender. This is it. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know. I'm doing everything that I was told is the society's way to do the right things. This is what you told me I was supposed to do. So this is what I'm doing. And now my life is fallen apart again. In that time frame of that time while I was living in my car, I met a woman by the name of Dr. Eddie Ben-Zion. I was a fitness trainer because I had a certification for fitness training, and it was something I was big in. I'd been a fitness competitor and stuff like that. So I started living in my car and was training these people at their homes. And she lived in this beautiful apartment in Miami Beach, up in like fancy, swanky, all the green juices and all of the stuff. And I just was kind of in awe of her. She was like, you should go to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I think that would be really awesome for you. You would learn a lot, not just doing this fitness training. You would learn so many different things. And what I now know to be true about that was when I dropped to my knees in that moment and asked for help, I was like, I don't know what else to do, that the universe brought me her as my first in. So instead of actually spending my extra $500 a month to find a place to live, I started paying for school again. I went back to school. And I was like, not the choice that most people would make, but
Right.
it was that I was being called to, that this was the right choice. It was not the logical choice. It was not anywhere near that, but it was that moment of like, it was my coming to Jesus. It was my dark night of the soul. It was my thing of like, I can no longer live this way, even though I've given up the drugs, I've given up all the stuff. I am in a place where this is not how I want to live my life. And I don't ever want to go back to the way that things were, but I don't know how to move forward into something different. And I've got to find a different way. And the different way for me was to take a risk into doing this. Now, fast forward, I started that school in 2010, graduated 2012. And in 2017, they ended up asking me back as a teacher. So, like the full circle that comes around with these kinds of experiences that then end up happening when I say yes to my soul. And that was one of the first ends for me into the world of all this other stuff that I was doing, because I said yes to that, where I could have been like, no, this isn't the thing, but that was in 2009 was the turning point for me. 2004 was really powerful, but I then had to go through the process of looking at the world through reality's eyes or normal society's eyes and recognizing that that wasn't it for me either.
Exactly. Your soul knew you were being called for something greater. You just felt it, you knew it. And I think it's amazing to me that when you start asking those questions like you did, is this all there is? Or so many people ask, what's the purpose of life anyway? Like, why am I here? What is this all about? When we start asking those questions, it seems like the universe just opens up the portal and goes, oh, she's ready. Okay. We're going to strip her out of this and we're going to start putting her here. And like we start being moved around and we don't understand what's going on. It's like, oh my God, I'm homeless, living out of my car. And then you chose to go to school knowing, other people would look at that as absolute
insanity,
madness.
madness.
Why would you choose
Why
that?
would you do that? Yeah. But I look at it this way, and this is the thing where, I say when we say those words or when we ask the universe a question, it always responds. And we think that, you know, the response is, I'm asking for peace, and all of a sudden everything's going to be peaceful. No, no, no. You ask for peace, the universe gives you chaos so you can find that peace, right? So I asked, is this all there is? And instead of the universe being like, oh, here we go, like, you know, it was like, whack, we're going to find out now. And I find this a lot with people, like, say they're in a job they hate, and all of a sudden they get fired from the job and they're super upset. I got fired. And I was like, you just said you hated the job. You just got what you wanted, right? Or the relationship that they're not happy with and whatever. And all of a sudden the partner cheats and then they're done, right? Whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, do you recognize like this was happening for you, right? Like this is literally, and sometimes it takes those years for that understanding to come. And it's like, we are always asking the question and the universe is always responding, but we just think the response is going to be some love and light, beautiful thing. And I always say, no, 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 no. Darkest before the dawn, right? The universe is going to respond and give you some whack in the head, or sometimes it is feathers and whispers and grace, but most of us don't listen to it when it's that. We got to wait until it really hits us.
Yes. And like what your mentor often says is you have to know the contrast. You have to know hot to know what cold is. You have to know what up is to know what down is. You have to know what the trauma is to know what peace feels like.
Right.
How would you even know what peace is if you didn't know the opposite of that? So 100%, that is part of the transformation journey. It's unavoidable. I don't care who you talk to.
Yeah.
So what did the old Melissa look like? Like, how would you describe her? You know, you're still Melissa, but the old version of yourself.
You know, I actually was just thinking about this in school right now. I had to write, you know, we're talking about paradigm shifts and stuff. And I said, my 47-year-old self, if I was going to go back and talk to my 20-year-old self and tell them who I was today, they'd want to lock me up. They'd think I was crazy. Yeah. They would think that me talking to entities and downloads of information and being a scientist now and like all of the things that I am doing that are like, some of it way out there that people will catch up into in 20, 30, 40 years. And some of it is like these things that they would look at me like, who is this person? Yet there is a piece of that underlying, which I have friends that have been friends of mine for 20, 25 years and more, who even knew me back in my stages of drug trafficking. And they'll tell you, you always had this heart, this way that you helped people, this way that you healed. We would be all cuddled up on ecstasy at 7 a.m. and I'm the one bringing everybody green smoothies and like coaching them through their crap and whatever, right? Like that was me even 25 years ago. So there is a piece of the core of who I was, but then there was these paradigms of what I believed about relationships, how the world worked, the identity of the super material of like success and how I'm going to be happy and what that looked like. And all of those things have completely dissolved. And I look at the world completely differently. And at the same time, my 20-year-old self was diagnosed bipolar, had every kind of, I had physical issues in the back. I had x-rays done that showed that I had back issues that don't no longer exist. I was on Valium and Prozac and you name it, anxiety attacks so bad that they thought that I was having heart things and I would pass out at work and be taken to the hospital. Bite marks up and down my arms, hiding myself in closets. When I'm talking about mental disorder from trauma, I was at the height of it. The whole thing of how I got into the drugs was my husband, I got married at 19. I was in college, you know, doing the thing, but I had so much trauma that my husband and I were trying to save our marriage. So we took ecstasy because MDMA was a drug produced in the 80s to save marriages, originally before it became a party drug. We took MDMA to try to save our marriage. That's how it started for me. But when I took that pill, it was the most connected I had ever felt to anything in my life. And I felt this euphoria and this love and this connection to everything. And it lasted a week. And I thought the whole world, and I was like, oh my God, I want to feel that again. Right. And that's how it started for me. It was one of those things, not knowing that that was something I could source within myself, because that's why I'm high on life. That's how I feel now all the time. I'm like, oh, you know, I live in that love state now. But back then I had so much physical or mental and emotional trauma that had caused physical issues in my system that I had a laundry list of things from the doctor of things that were wrong with me that have all been healed. But so that younger 20-year-old version of myself, we are light years away, but there's the core of who I was that's still a part of me. And I get to take all of those lessons and all that piece and bring that to me now. And so I look at her and I thank her so much for being willing to go through the things that she did to allow me to grow and to do this. And that I also had such I'm a persistent person, right? My sister had addiction problem. It took her 25 years to heal it. And she was always like, how did you do that? And I was like, I just had to make a choice. Like, I was like, I had a 5.5-year-old son. And I was like, I'm not going to not do this. Right. Like, and so there was a point to me, there was also this conviction that I didn't care what I was going to do. I was going to make it.
That part of you that was curious, that part of you that was the deep thinker,
Mm-hmm.
that part of you was always there.
Yeah.
You camouflaged it. You were seeking, as you state in your book and lots of your teachings, you're looking for something outside of you
Mm-hmm.
to find yourself. That is absolutely the wrong place to be looking. Incredible. What my experience has been in the transformational journey is there is always something. I don't care what the experience is, something needs to be released, let go
Mm-hmm.
of. You've been labeling all kinds of stuff, all kinds of healings that you've experienced, but you have literally walked through the fire amazingly. What were some of the things? Maybe the beliefs, the identities, maybe even the people, the physical, material aspects of life. I know you already explained some of that as well,
Mm-hmm.
living in your car. But what is it that you had to start releasing to start getting on this healing journey?
I think the number one thing that I released was control. I didn't realize, because I had no sense of safety as a child. I grew up in a very abusive home. I had no control over myself and my body in right yes or no's or anything like that. As I grew older, I wanted to control everything. I got straight A's in high school. I was the top of my class. I got every award that existed. I was varsity letterman and all that, like sports. Like, I mean, I was in control of everything. And that control, it caused me an eating disorder, right? Because I wanted to control my food. I wanted to control the way that I looked. I wanted to control the way that people liked me. I wanted to control the perception. I can remember I got pregnant with my son. I was 111 pounds. Now I'm 5'11". And I currently weigh almost 160, and that's solid muscle. And I'm a size 4 at 160, right? Like very not big. So if you can only imagine 50 pounds less, but it was a control for me. I was like, I wanted to control my body. And I did it to a point where I controlled other people with sex, all of these different things. And so the one thing that I really had to learn was that I really had no control, and to surrender in. And when I started allowing the magic of the universe and allowing these energies, my eyes started healing, my body started healing, these experiences started healing. So that was one of the things that I really had to let go of. And then definitely the beliefs. Like, I had full on paradigm shifts in my life, raised by a father who went to ministry school, but who was also a rapist and a sociopath, right? So my beliefs around God and religion and the way that the world worked. I mean, I read the Bible from end to end in the 3rd grade, because I was in a Christian school and I have a super high IQ. And so I had this ability to process things. And so in the 3rd grade, after reading this book and winning an award for reading the entire Bible at my Christian school, I'm like, now can we talk about this?
Yeah.
And I'm starting to question things, and they're like, oh, no.
Can't do that.
You can't do that. And then and when I was 17 years old, I am top of my class, winning awards at school, getting ready to graduate from high school. And yet my rape case is in the same newspaper that my awards are in, right? Without my name, but like a couple of pages later, and I'm in this thing. And my judge is my Sunday school teacher. And so there's, again, this connection between, for me, the religion and, being forced to be baptized when I was 12 years, like all sorts of weird shit around all of that. So when I got out and I was like, why did God if God exists, why did he let me have all these things happen to me? Like, what is all this? I spent that time from like 17 until my early 30s being like an FU to I couldn't even say the word God. Couldn't even say it, right? It was so powerful for me. So a paradigm shift for me was, in my late 30s, all of a sudden, I'm getting Mother Mary, Yeshua, like all of these religious, right, in my mind, religious things coming to me, like getting messages. And then I'm also at that time studying, I'm going to India and studying with like Kali and the energy over there in Shiva and all these different places. And then I started to study theology. So I went in and was like, there's something else here. And so I had to paradigm shift and take away this idea of what Christianity and religion was and all of these things and all of, Muslims are bad, Hindus are this and that, like all these paradigm shifts, especially growing up in Ohio, that you get about the outside world, and started to have to shift that. So now that I'm like on the other side of that, I'm spiritual, but I honor all the religions. I don't honor the way that they're structured, but the beliefs and the underlying messages of all of them and how they connect together. So that was another thing I had to let go of, my disinterest in anything that had like archangels. I didn't want to hear about an archangel. My mom was like, you were given to me as a gift by Archangel Gabriel. And I was like, no. I don't want to hear about that crap, right? Like I was like, no, that's some religious thing over there that I don't want to talk about. And now, I mean, I'm like, I got them all around me, hanging out with me, doing work with them, right? Like these angels, these are ascended masters, big paradigm shift. So those are a couple of the things that I think were like very, very big for me. Obviously, like issues with like how I treat my body and food and, biohacking and all sorts, like everything. My whole life, there's not a thing probably about my life that hasn't completely been a paradigm shift that I haven't had to let go of in some sort of way.
Fascinating. And so some of the childhood trauma that you experienced, if anyone's listening today that has a similar story, what would you say would be one way of helping them release that, or maybe even the pain of addiction, releasing those things?
I think that one of my favorite processes that I like to do is when we can become that higher self, that observer, and look down on the situation and not look at the facts, but look at what was it actually the meaning? What was I supposed to learn? What was the what like with religion? Like, okay, my parents were religious zealots, right? Speaking in tongues and all this, yet my father was this person over here that was doing all this stuff. But what was it they were really trying to teach me underneath? Like, what was the belief underneath all of those things about like love? And later in life, when I came out to my mom, and my mom's a really, really religious, I was like, oh, my mom, she's religious, she's Christian. I'm going to come out and tell her, like, I married a woman for a while. I've been married to both men and women in my life. And so when I came out and was like, I'm a lesbian, right? At that time, I thought I was a lesbian, I'm bi. And she was like, I love you. It's okay. And that was the message that I needed to, right. That was the message that I needed to hear, right, years ago. And so I think that when we're looking at, whether it's through looking at religion or, healing from something from our parents or any of those things, is how can I step out of myself to look at this from a higher standpoint, to look at the lesson, if I can learn the lesson from it, if I can see the deeper truth, if I can walk down the wiring. Because I believe that when I was, doing some of my trainings, one of the things that always was really profound for me is everything is either a cry for love or comes from love. So, the punishment from our parents was not because they hated us, but because they actually loved us. Or when something happens, it's like, it wasn't that they hated us, it was a cry for more love, but that was the only way, because of their own trauma, that they knew how to do that, right? I left my son with his father at the age of 5.5 years old to get out of drug trafficking, moved out of the state. It wasn't because I loved him, it was because I loved him so much that I was afraid I was going to go to prison or die. And the only way for me not to do that and be in his life for the rest of his life was to actually remove myself. So it was a cry for me. It was the depthness of my love. And so, but that could have been looked at by my son by like abandonment. Thank goodness he's an older soul than I am, I think. and was able at such a young age, and at the age of 9, to process everything. And we have the best relationship ever. But that's the gift of how he said that I raised him then, to things like that was able to have that in a different way. But a lot of times that abandonment or those things from our childhood create these stories in our head about what the truth really is. And we have to be able to find the real truth behind it. And I think that that's really the true key.
Gosh, that had to be the hardest thing to release, your son. I know that would be the hardest thing for me, but the right thing to do to take care of yourself, to get yourself right. I mean, so I see it all.
It took me years and years to forgive myself. And honestly, I'll tell you, there was layers when he was 14 years old. So, many years later, I did my first conference and I was talking about bad mother syndrome. And he was there, and he is super shy, got up on stage and took the microphone from me at the age of 14 and was like, "You are the best mother anyone could ever have." And at that moment, there was a portion that healed. But I'll tell you even more, he's now 26 years old, and him and his partner sat down with me this last summer when I was home. And he was like, "So we just want to let you know, when we have kids, we want to raise our kids like you raised Asher." And I was like,
Oh,
so the amount of healing and the years that it's taken for me to get over the fact that I did something that, especially a mom abandoning their kid. I was abandoned as a kid by, my parent, right? These things happened to me. So I felt like I'm perpetuating a cycle here. I'm just doing what happened to me. But I decided I was going to try to do it different. And I did, right? But we have these ways or these stories and these things that we look at. And it was one of the hardest things. And there are still parts of me that regrets some of the things that I missed growing up. And I'm almost like, should have had another one to just go through the young kid stuff.
yeah.
Uh,
Regret is a bitch. I hate it. You know? Yeah. Well, being a numerologist, 100% convinced that we chose our parents
mm,
and our kid chose us for exactly those reasons that you just stated, so that they could have these experiences and evolve through it. Just like you've gone through some horrific experiences so that you can have an incredible
mm.
a comeback. I
Well,
mean,
it's funny because I'll say the numerology because I love that.
yeah.
'Cause I'm a 22 life path.
Oh, there you have it.
So,
Okay,
right. When
yes.
I was like, you can either really screw everything up and like go down right this way, or you can figure it out and then you get to build something. And so, yeah, I think that I chose that very much. So I know I chose my parents. I know I chose super traumatized things, and I know my son chose me. And I do. I call him all the time and say, "So thank you so much for allowing me, choosing me to be your mom." You know.
Yeah, I say that to my son all the time too. Yes. And it's all out of love. I mean, those soul contracts, as awful as they are, it's come and do these horrific things
Yeah.
as a child, and I will do that because I love you. I mean, because it's
Mhm.
all, that's what our essence is. Love your story. Very inspiring. I know that you've done so much healing work, like beyond the norm. Went just kind of gangbusters on healing yourself, you know? I mean, it's one thing to take the observer seat and go, "Okay, I'm self-aware. I'm going to do better next time." But you just took it to a whole other level. So how did you get on this path? And the next stage of transformation in my experience is, and it kind of goes through the entire journey, is that rejuvenation. You're constantly rebuilding your energy and your new self. It's like, okay, I'm healing now. This is who I am now. And now I'm healing. So it's that self-care. After breaking down, how did you rebuild? I mean, when did you really start that healing? What practices? I have so
Mm.
many questions.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, right, in 2010, when I started going to IIN, I called IIN my gateway drug, right? Like we have gateway drugs and other things,
Yeah,
but I called
right.
IIN, Institute for Integrative Nutrition, my gateway drug, because first for me, I had to heal the physical body because I had had so many years of first eating disorders and drugs and all of these things, that I had so much physical things going on. Plus, I was a fitness and figure competitor. I had adrenal fatigue. I had it all, like everything that you could imagine, thyroid conditions. So IIN, Institute for Integrative Nutrition, for me was heal the physical pieces, right? Heal the physical body. And I feel it's almost kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Yeah, we want to work on the soul, we want to work on the mind, but your body is your basis. And I think a lot of times we find kind of like in the world of spiritual work that we forget about the body. We forget that the body is the vessel, the earth, right? And I was also a body escapist, meaning because of the amount of sexual trauma and things that I had in my body, I didn't even want to be in my body. I wanted to be out there somewhere. So I was like escaping out, right? Like out the body. And I had to learn to ground and love my body. First thing, I didn't love my body. I had eating disorders. I was like, I had to love it at no matter what the size, weight, skin color, right? All of the things. And so for me, that was the first piece, was working towards the physical healing. Because as the body started to physically heal itself, and at that same time, I started learning like things like NLP and transformational coaching method. And so for me, it was a 3-layer process. It was body, and then mind, right? That next step is like, okay, now my body is physically starting to heal itself. I've learned how to get it nutrition, some of the things, but there were certain pieces of things in my physical body that were not healing, right? Like this eczema in my skin and stuff. And I thought it was food related, right? Like, or this related. And it turns out it was energetic related, right? Trauma from the past, things in my energy field. So then I started working on mindset, right? So then it was all the NLP and the mindset and the coaching and all of the pieces of like, how do I heal on that? And then through the practices of learning these things and working with clients, because at that time I was working with physical, clients, body image, healing, food, that kind of stuff. My clients were having these instantaneous healings and this physical stuff. And I'm like, something else is going on here. And that's when I got into energy work. So then I started working with the energy field, learning processes, working with energy, right? Like working with our chakra centers and our auric field and the toroidal field. And then I started getting into quantum physics and understanding, right? So it was like this layering for me of energy. And then through the processes of those three pieces going through, and this was a year's process, right? Like I started in 2010, and then it was like, the next piece came in like 2013. I started doing the mindset work and the NLP. And then it was like 2016, I got into the energy work. And then it was this higher self, soul level process of like, okay, now there's a fourth level. Now I'm an oracle. I can download. I'm seeing things. I get information. I know things. I can move energy. I can move all this stuff. So there was this, it's been a layering effect that I have really found. So like what we teach in our mystery school with the mysteries is we start with the descent. We start with the physical, going down into the shadow and the deep and the depth and the physical and the reality and all those things. And we ascend up through those experiences, just like I learned how through the ascension of those processes, because I think that there's a lot of work out there, especially when, I've had healers come into my school for, been doing this for 30, 40 years. And they're like, oh, there's a difference here to the groundedness of how we work through things and learn these processes of the mysteries than I've ever seen before. I've found that was because I learned through my own journey, these different pieces in that kind of way. And so since 2010, when I started this journey, I've gotten over 20 certifications and degrees, and I kept and traveled. Like I've been to 60 countries, and I've sat in ceremonies and healings and worked with, shamans and gurus, and been trained by, and not all 60 countries, but, in several different major, countries, Chile and Peru and India and Egypt, right? Like the places where the mysteries come from. So I've combined both science, that physical reality of like what science is telling us for the Western mind, with this experience of that. And I think that that's the combination that we all need, and we have to work through every layer of the being. You can't just heal one layer. That's why a lot of psychologists have come and taken my courses and stuff too. Is like, you can't just work with the psychology and the top down if you forget about the somatics, if you forget about the body, if you're not working with the energy field. There's stuff in this energy field if it's distorted. And then really, what does your soul say? So I think it's been a layering effect for me.
Yeah, you're spot on. And that was my experience. I was on this intense spiritual path of awakening, and was going to retreats and reading books and just anything I can get my hands on. I was so hungry for it. Well, when you're waking up and you're growing, and you're just like, what is this light? I've got to see more of it. And then my body became very toxic. And then I saw like I lost my spiritual connection. And I couldn't hear that inner voice anymore. It was like, what is going on? But I was exposed to mold and all that. And then I'm like, oh my God, it's my body. I have to heal the body, and then I can get that spiritual connection back.
It's an antenna, right? We're an antenna. We're literally the antenna. They call us when you hear of like the rainbow bridge, our chakras are rainbow, right? We are the rainbow bridge. We are the connection between as above, so below. That is the thing. Like we are this divine channel, and we all have the ability to open our pillar of light and be that. But your nervous system has to be in a certain way and aligned in a certain, and the more that you have that, so there's this layering of things that happen. And so many people are trying, like say, you're doing all this spiritual work, and then they get sick or these things happen. Like, I don't understand, why is my body breaking down? I said, because you're trying to plug a 210 into a 110, right? You're blowing your circuit. It has to be like dip, 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 go do the work, rest, and let the body, recalibrate. That's why at the end of yoga, they call it the savasana. Everybody thinks savasana is, You're actually resetting the nervous system, right? There's actually a whole thing behind why that asana is at the end of a yoga practice, but that's our whole lives. We're supposed to have the asana of, savasana at the end of all of our things to reset and have our nervous systems heal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful recap of the rebounding rejuvenation stage, because
Yeah.
it is throughout our journey. I love that. The next stage of transformation, which you beautifully have described already. But there's really a point in time when you step out as this different version of yourself. You've done the healing work, kind of that moment where you're in your car crying, that you realize you've been reinvented.
Mm.
But your journey from drug trafficking and now getting your PhD in human potential. I mean, this is like massive transformation. How did you reinvent your identity and really reclaim your purpose and really
Mm.
know what your purpose is? Because I think that's the biggest question people have on the journey. It's like, what is my purpose? So when did you realize yours?
I think I'm still realizing it. I thought my purpose was to teach. I thought my purpose was to help others. And then I realized my purpose is just to be here in love. Like, I think I learn every day that my purpose isn't something that I do. The purpose, I already in that, and I just get to be more and more and more of that. But that's come with my growth and my ascension, and the fact that I think so many times we're sold the story that I have to find the purpose, again, something outside of me that I have to search for. And then when I finally have my purpose, I'll feel fulfilled. And actually the fulfillment is as I am fulfilled. And therefore my purpose of what I should do to help the world is being downloaded into me on a deeper level. In 2022, my whole world fell apart again. I went through, I had before that, my year of what I call my year of death. After my initiation in 2021 in Egypt, 7 people passed away, including 2 family members, some students, some friends. And at the same time, I lost the most important relationship in my life, my best friend and my lover. The 2 of them disappeared out of my life. I lost my home in California, and I shut down my business, and I moved out of the country. Right. And so I thought I was living on my purpose. In 2022, I'd done thousands of people have been doing this stuff, had this incredible intuitive intelligence academy, teaching quantum healing, whatever. But the universe had been trying to tell me for a while it was time to move on, and I didn't want to listen. Right. Because I'm thinking that my purpose, this is what it is. And so I spent that year of 2022, 1 year from July 2022 to 2023, and it took the year off. And it was in that time that I went back to school, that I wrote the book, that I was like in this space. And I literally when I walked out of all of these things in July of 2022, I had $10,000 to my name. I didn't know how I was going to survive without working. I didn't know what I was going to do, but the universe literally provided for me for that entire year. And I always had everything, and money came out of nowhere. And I mean, it was a wild story. But what I learned at that moment was what I thought was purpose, and what I was really meant to do here, and how I stepped into. That's why the book is called High on Life, is because I stepped into this version of myself that lived in bliss consciousness, that was so high on life that then, instead of my ego saying, I'm supposed to have a 7-figure business that teaches quantum healing, that helps people do this, blah, 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 because I never want to be homeless again. And I want to help people, but I also want to do right. And instead, when I let everything go in 2024, when I got the message that came from outside of me, you're supposed to open the mystery school. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't. And then I was like, and I kept getting these messages, right? Purpose outside of me, because before I'd always like build a business, all the systems, and I was like, I don't want to go back to doing that. And so I was literally told my guides, I was like, you want me to open a mystery school? You fill it. And I'm going to sit here and see what happens. And I did, it literally happened. And I was like, okay. And then we ran our first round, and it was so successful. And the people transformation, it was a new level of teaching that I was like, okay, I guess I am actually meant to do that. But it was not me saying this. Same thing with my book. I lost my book 2 days before 3rd round of edits were due. The entire book, computer crashed, lost everything, had the book open for 6 months on my computer working on it, had never saved it. And I had to
Wow.
rewrite the book, right? Rewrite the book. And I did it in
Uh-uh.
8 days. I channeled the book every night. I'd go to bed before I go to bed, and I would channel the book. I ended up with 3 extra chapters that weren't in the original book. And the night before I wrote the last chapter, I asked Yeshua, I was like, what am I writing tomorrow? He tells me, I said, no, I'm not. And I went to sleep, get up in the morning. He's like, well, I'm like, what am I writing? I was again like, no, I'm not going to write that story. I don't want to share that. That's not part of my thing. And he's like, write it and see if it fits. Now the book's been out a couple of weeks, right? And I'm getting messages. It's the favorite chapter.
Mm.
So it wasn't me, not my purpose, not me, right? So this has been, for me, it's like the learning of, we already are living our purpose by being here. Do you know how many people in the galaxy, how many souls want to be on this planet right now doing what we're doing? All of them. We are the greatest show in the galaxy.
Mhm.
So you already have your purpose by being here. So instead of trying to figure out what it is, just be your authentic self and allow those messages to come through and just walk one moment every day. And you will be led to it. You will be led to whatever you're meant to share in this world, whether it's being the most amazing mother or father or a teacher or you, sitting in nature for the rest of your life and doing nothing. It doesn't matter. It's all the same.
Beautiful. I had just posted something saying these are incredible, magical times we are living in, but you would never know it. You'd never know it because we're all so distracted and disconnected. What do you have to say about the shift that's taking place and perhaps the lack of the shift that is taking place with a lot of humanity?
So my favorite thing to always talk about is the darkness before the dawn, right? Think about it like this. Like we keep talking about the 5D shift, the golden age, all the things. And according to what things look like, because the world has become so small, interconnection and communication, that we think the world is worse than it ever been, blowing up more than it ever was. But if you look at it statistically over the last couple of thousands of years, statistically, it all is getting better. The crime rates, all the stuff are going down per capita and all these types of things, right? We just are more interconnected. And so we look and think it's, oh my God, it's getting so much worse. And yet at the same time, we are in a place where we have had the COVID, we've had tons of nature disasters going on. And I tell people, and I warn them right now, we are in a year of 2025 and we will have revelation and revolution. So revelation is we're going to see things showing up that we never thought possible and expected. And it's going to be like this revelatory, incredible thing. And then revolution, meaning that we're looking at global civil war, the breakdown of politics, food systems, the way that we see things, all of these things crumbling. And so for us to have and see the crumbling of these things, it's going to get to where it looks a hell of a lot darker and worse, darkest before the dawn, before we have the breakthrough. Now, what we have to hold to is the thing of like those of us that can hold that light and that experience of like, I know the truth of what is really here, have to hold into that experience so that those that are going through that dark night, right? Yourself and myself, Angel, we've gone through all these experiences so we can hold the light for those coming through it now. We have 1 billion people waking up right now, and waking up means 1 billion people going through the worst traumas of their life and the dark nights of the soul and the experiences, because that's what causes this shift of this wake up. So it's this underpinning of like the shakeup is there, but all we have to do is hold on, right? Like hold the light, hold on, and be ushers into this new experience, because I believe in my lifetime, I am not yet 50 years old. I will be a centurion into my early hundreds, right? I believe in my lifetime, we will see a massive shift. Those of us that are not able to process or understand, and it looks like it's really bad, think of my story, what I talked about, the gratitude for the trauma. Like if you can hold in right now and see the atrocities that are going on in some of these countries and the things that are happening, and you can see them and thank every single one of those souls that chose to come in to be a catalyst for this. And instead of resisting these things and fighting against it, and instead send it more love, Mahatma, right? Send it more love, show more of that. We will transform faster through that than if we live in that fear, in that darkness ourselves. And so those of us that know how need to hold that for those that are not ready to yet.
Yes, that really is exactly what's happening. And it's almost like the contrast we were talking about that you have to experience before we experience that joy and that healing and that gratitude of everything we're going through. And I have to believe that some souls agreed to come here to play the role,
100%.
of being the light. And then there's some that are like, no, I
You
came to
had to
show
have
you the
somebody,
darkness.
right? like my rapist or my father or things like that, right? We're standing at the doorstop, getting ready to come to earth, right? And we're there and we're all hanging out and we're like, I love you so much. Okay, this lifetime, I want to learn forgiveness. So guess what? What are you going to do to me that is going to be so bad that I'm going to have to learn forgiveness? And they're like, I'm going to do this for you, but don't forget who I am.
Yeah.
Right. And then they come here and they do something so traumatically horrible to you so you can learn forgiveness in this life. And they're like, please don't forget who I am on a soul level. That's what some of these souls have come to do, right? Some of these mass, whatever, the atrocities, the genocides, the things, I work with survivors of human trafficking all over the world. I've worked with them in different countries here in the United States. I'm on the board for that, right? I work with the survivors to help them to heal, but I also have worked with the other side in the prisons. And why? Because I also know the role that they came here to play to help us all.
Yeah. Yeah. You see people as souls.
Yeah, I do.
As I do. Yeah. That is exactly the reinventing that we are going through right now. We're going through all kinds
As a collective, all of us.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The next stage is resurrection, and the true rising above the challenges. You talk about your year of death. I want to talk a little bit about what I've read about you and your soul blueprint, because this to me is fascinating stuff. We're going to have to bridge some of the audience over to this way of thinking and the Akashic records and what that is. Maybe explain a little bit about what that is and how you came to understand and embody these sacred memories, and how you're integrating them as you've resurrected. Because to me, these are big shoes to fill in this lifetime. And when you have had all these other experiences, and I'll ask you to list, name some, it's no wonder you have a 22 path big soul work to do here. So you set that up for yourself nicely. Explain some of that part of your journey.
This is part of the journey that if I were to talk to my 20-year-old self, I'd be like, this doesn't exist. That's not for real, right? Like, although I always believed that I was a soul and that I obviously had other lifetimes, right? Or what I used to call past lives. But now that I understand, the quantum unified field and working with the unified field physics, I understand how time works and everything existing right now. When I started, the Akashic, right, or it's a field of information that we all have access to. So every word that you speak is an imprint, right? When they would say spelling, you create a spell. So every word that we speak, every action that we take, everything is imprinted in this field for all space and time. Energy is not created or destroyed. And so we know this both through what is the Akashic, right? The Akashic is a Vedic term, right? For this field of information, the unified field, we can call it, right? There's the energy synapses that go through this consciousness, whatever you want to call it in your experience. But it's like
the original AI.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, if we want to think of it as like a library of, like, if I were to get into, go to the library, my library, and walk down the hallway, there would be lined with books and books and books and books of our lives, and all of the lives. And there's been some theoretical numbers done where it says somewhere around that each of us has had theoretically at least 1,736 lives or something like that, right? Like they did a mathematical thing of like how you can figure out these things. But that is not just Earth, right? Earth is one dimension, one plane. We've got to understand that there's many dimensions and planes. There's many realities, right? There's everything. We have also these like 12 soul groups. So one of the things that we teach in the mystery school is the code of 12. And so there's like these 12 soul groups. And so like the Arcturians or the Palladians or the Syrians or the Magdalens and the Essenes, right? All these different experiences. And so for me, my awakening to my soul blueprint, or the experience of like who we are, was one through the study of quantum physics and DNA, and understanding that they said at one point in time that 90% of our DNA was junk, right? We've heard this thing, right? No, not possible. God, universe, source, consciousness doesn't make any mistakes. What they now know to be true and discovered is that our DNA is multidimensional, and actually it has light receptors, and light holds encoded information. Light is a 6-dimensional experience, and this codes of information holds all of the information from our Akashic, from our lifetimes, that comes down through our soul star, comes into our body, and you can awaken these DNA strands, right? So we have 2 strands of DNA. You can awaken up into 12 strands of DNA. And as you awaken these, you have the memories of these other lifetimes. You have the memories encoded from these pieces and these experiences. So the more and more that I started working with healing my energy body, building my pillar of light, doing these things, I started having memories dropping in of seeing me in other lives, having experience when I was an Egyptian, when I was in a scene, when I was on another planet. This is that piece of like, some people are like, oh, is that really real? Well, I mean, there's no way to prove, right, any way or not, but I'll tell you the experiences that I've had are real. The connections, when I look in somebody's eyes that I know for a fact that I've known them before, how do you explain that? And then I have a memory come through and you're like, oh, I know for a fact that's why that person treats me the way that they do, because we have this other life connection, that this is where this thing comes in. And then on top of that, I've had abilities and healing things come through that I am now capable of doing that I didn't learn in this lifetime. Where did they come from? You know, it's one of those, you can believe it or not, but my experience has been, my connections with other humans is where it really started for me. My first connection in 1999, I heard somebody behind me. I was a bartender at a bar. I was in college. I just left my husband 2 months prior, and my son was young. And I heard somebody say, "You have the best butt I've ever seen." And I turned around and I looked him in the eyes. I reached over the bar and I grabbed him and I kissed him. 25 years later, right? And we are no longer together, but we've been together twice in this lifetime. We are best friends, and we have soul connections for over 75 lifetimes that we can pinpoint at this point. You can't tell me that that wasn't instant soul recognition. I've had that happen before with some, you know, so these types of things. So our soul blueprint, as you start to awaken this information and this, when you start to work with the Ka body, when you start to work with your pillar of light, when you start to understand how to open up the DNA to get these information, it drops in and you start to see the path of what you're meant here to do, right? I'm a star seed. I've come from somewhere else to come help the world heal, to help us all to transcend and ascend together, to do these things that, and I know that to be true in my bones. But if you'd have told me that 25 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, send her to my house.
Right. Is this some of the work that you do in your mystery school?
Yeah, it
Oh,
is.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And I do believe in the power of imagination. That is one of our superpowers. And even though you
Mhm.
might say, oh, this is probably my imagination,
Mhm.
that's the bridge. I
Yeah.
think our imagination is the bridge, and how we receive it,
Mhm.
interpret it, accept it is the experience.
Yeah.
So I really commend you for being so open to receiving these as truths and your realities. And I'm right there with you. I had a hypnosis, or a quantum hypnosis. Uh,
QHHT.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Wow.
Very similar. I think you go into that field
Mhm.
where I'm talking about the imagination, and afterwards I'm like, did I just imagine all this? But
Yeah.
now I am seeing these parallels in my life that
Mhm.
I'm like, oh no, that
Yeah.
is absolutely, like, that's where that karma came from. I know I'm working through that shit now. Other lifetime experiences. It is fascinating. It's
Mhm.
fascinating stuff. And I
Mhm.
think just opening ourselves up to there being more
Yeah.
to what we can see and what we know, what we've known.
Mhm. And I think that, you know, like one of the things that, whether it's real or not, right? As a scientist, someone that is, you know, literally in the science of the unified field and quantum physics and neuroscience, I can see the parallels and the belief, like the science actually proves that we do have, there are multi-dimensions, and that these, you know, these things exist. And on top of that, I have seen people have, like I said, instantaneous healings, like both from trauma or physical or things like that, that don't make logical sense. But when they were able to tap into something and find the piece of this thing from this other life, and then all of a sudden have this incredible healing in this lifetime, whether it's real or not, I mean, that works for me.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, if it brings you back to your bliss,
Mm-hmm.
then so be it. It
Yeah.
it helps explain so much about who I am, and that's why
Mhm.
we're here, to know who we are, I think, as Neil often teaches.
Yeah.
That's kind of bringing us back to the last stage of transformation, which is the respond stage, which is taking your journey, taking the transformation, taking all the wisdom, the life lessons, and then being called to pay it forward.
Mm,
I mean, what's the point of keeping all that inside if we
yep.
can't share it with maybe somebody else who's had something similar, who's on the same path? You are clearly doing this today with, and you have been, since you've been called to help people in so many ways, starting from nutrition, starting from the mind, the body, the
Mm.
soul, and now even at a higher level. What is the message that you would share with somebody who's just beginning their transformation, knowing that there is some kind of calling hidden in their experience?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think every single one of us, when you walk the path, you get to a point where you can't not share what you've learned to heal yourself, right? Because you have to give back and contribute, and that's really what it's here for, even if it's one other person. And so that respond for me, my next level of my mind, and that was my book, High on Life. That was why I decided to write the book, was because I wanted to even reach more people. And so what I tell people, and what I truly believe is the key is, we're seeking so much for this thing, or this whatever. And when I talk about a prescription for bliss, I'm actually talking about bliss consciousness, which is a state of being. And when you live in that state of being, you actually plug into the consciousness of the unified field. You plug into the frequency of the field, which is unconditional love. It is a frequency that you then become a part of. And then because of that, it becomes this cycle of moving through, where I get to be this, and then I get to then share that. Again, it's not this, I have to go, yes, have I done a lot of things? I've gone and sat in ceremonies and been here and done that and taken short and courses and everything and stuff. But in the end, none of that external stuff does anything if I don't come back in and embody it and put it in here and tap into that field and become that I am a part of that. And then what happens is, I don't even actually have to speak my words. I can walk into a room and see an entire room shift because of the frequency that I am at as I walk into a room, right? I've played games with my friends at bars, or like I've had taught it. I've spoken at a conference with up to 2,000 people, and I'll be like, watch what happens. Like, I can do this. You can make a whole room go, like, all of a sudden, you like the right frequency, and people just get quiet and they look around for a minute, and they're just like, and then everything softens. Or the beingness is even if you're not ready to teach it or go out there and stuff, just walk in it, just be it. People around you will shift and heal just because the presence of you. I had someone in my life that was deep into the depths of addiction, to the point where we bought a grave for them because we thought they were going to die. And we never thought they were going to transform. It had been 20 some years in this experience. And I literally got on a plane, went to their home, walked into their home, knowing that they were doing drugs at the time, sat with them for 45 minutes to just have them be in my frequency. And they came back, they've been sober a year and a half now, and came back to me and said, I don't know what happened, but that was the day everything changed.
Mm.
Right. And I had
Bliss
to go out with my
consciousness.
one last ditch effort. I wasn't talking about healing or telling them they needed to go do whatever. I had tried that for fucking years.
Mm.
I had tried that. I had done all those things. I was like, this was me just coming in and being in peace, telling them I love them, and standing there and being in such a vibrational frequency that I was hoping that it might catch. And it did.
Yeah. Wow.
That's what we're here to do.
Yeah. Bliss consciousness. I absolutely love that. For anyone wondering your purpose, that's it. And being in your beingness. I mean, how else do you say that?
Yeah.
And your highest self, just being your best self, I guess,
Mhm.
really, as evolved as you are, be that person and then heal and become that person, then heal. People who may not be as far along the path will benefit from your essence. And that is some powerful, powerful stuff. So, yeah, and a great segue to your book, High on Life, A Prescription for Bliss is your
Mhm.
ultimate guide to transcending the stress, the trauma, and disconnection of modern life. Who couldn't use that right now? Blending modern science, ancient spiritual wisdom, and practical healing techniques. everything that Melissa just shared with us in this podcast. Amazing stuff. So this book has got to be amazing as well. It offers practical, soul enriching tools and a roadmap to elevating your energy and transforming your reality. You'll learn how to tap into higher states of awareness, cultivate inner harmony, and live with greater joy and purpose with guided exercises, insights, and energy healing, quantum awareness, mind-body alignment. Sounds like a great read and a very, very timely book for
Thank
us
you.
all. Where can we get a copy?
If you go to my website, you can just click on the thing that takes you straight to, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Hay House. You can just go straight to my website and click on it there. And it'll take you straight. Or if you want, you can actually, when you go to my website, you can get a free chapter of the book and these, what we call Bliss RX toolkit that gives you meditations and different things like that. And you can check that out. And then if you love the book, you can go grab it too.
Okay. And your website is?
Oh, my name, Melissa Minnich, MELISSA MINNICH, melissaminnick.com. Super simple.
Yeah.
You can find me on any social media under that. Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. Social media. You can also check out our mystery school there on our website. And I will also put a link in the comments as well. So, Melissa, this has been an absolute divine conversation, a true activation in itself. I really feel lifted as well. So thank you for sharing your essence with me and our audience today. You've really done some work, and you'll continue to do the work and light the way for so many. So you're what I would call a modern day goddess. You're just,
Thanks.
I mean, she's got tats. She's cool. Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I definitely am like, that's why I can go talk in prisons and things like that. Cause I'm like, because of my past, because of this, like I do have a certain energy, but I also can connect with the average person. I think we need a lot of that these days. So thank you so much, Angel, for having me on this and for this fun conversation today.
Yeah. Awesome. It's great learning about you and your journey. And one last thing, I always like to close the show with a powerful affirmation to lock in the message, to lock in the energy. Is there an affirmation that you can think of that would be powerful to lock in what you would like the audience to take away from everything that you've shared?
I mean, I just think it's all that everything that there is, you are love, or if you just want to say it out loud and repeat it with me, it's I am love, right? I am love. And I think that when we just remember that and you look at every person as, I said, love, what would love do? Right? We are all love.
Yeah, I am love. I think that's all we really need to know. All the answers, all the questions. Beautiful. Thank you again, Melissa. And if this episode awakened something in you, created some curiosity in you, then please share it. Leave a review. Let us know. Leave a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are. Or join us again as we continue to awaken the sacred within. Until next time, again, I'm Angel. Thank you for joining us and listening to the Transform with Angel show, where transformation is not just a journey, it's a return to truth. It's a return to being who you are. Just be your best self. Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining the show. I wanted to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and share this video with somebody who might be curious about these things. And if you haven't done so already, go to transformwithangel.com and download a free copy of my latest book, How to Conquer Anything. There you can find courses and some other resources to help you on your transformation journey. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.